Welcome to the English version of Para Ser Legal. My name is Andrés Mejer. I'm a published author, speaker, and immigration attorney, and we have a great segment for you today. We're going to talk about three things. One, how did Brian stop ICE from arresting immigrants? What did he use? How was he able to stop ICE? Two, what are those rights that you need to know to avoid being detained by ICE? And three, what are the 5 critical mistakes that immigrants make that can result in detention? Thank you for joining us. I'm Andrés Mejer, and let's get right into it. So, Brian McCormick, who is he? In March, he had just left courthouse. He had 2 immigrants in the car with him. They went there for some routine traffic matters. Leaving the courthouse, they get pulled over by who they think is the police. 3 cars surround him, pull him over. A guy with a jacket saying police on it shows up at the door, says, "Please, license, insurance, registration." He pulls out his license. He says, and then they start asking, "Who are the people in the back?" And he says, "Don't answer." Nobody, they don't say anything. They insist again. They don't answer. Brian says, "We know our rights. What are you stopping me for?" That's when he say, "We're with ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement." And they show him a document saying this is an order for their arrest. He looks at it and says, "This is not an order of arrest." And the officer insists, "Yes, it is." And Brian, knowing his rights, says, "No, this is a document signed by a DHS supervisor." He says, "Show me an order signed by a judge." ICE officer says, "This is a valid order under 8 USC code, blah, blah, blah. Do you know that statute?" And he says, "Well, not exactly. I'm studying to be an accredited representative, so yeah, I know my rights." This is not a valid order. They refuse to give the names and information of the passengers in the car. He says, "Listen, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm the driver of this car, and you have no right to stop me." What happened? ICE left. Now, most of that conversation was on video. Not all of it. Not the initial conversation. What the video also shows is saying, "Look, my attorney's on the way. I'm not answering any questions without my attorney." That stopped it. I know my rights. I know this is not a valid order, and I won't talk to you without my attorney. Officers went back into the car, waited, and then drove off. Nobody was detained. Nobody was arrested. How did that happen? Because Brian actually teaches Know Your Rights seminars. He's not an attorney. He works for an organization in upstate New York. Now, I've done, 20 seminars, Know Your Rights seminars. So we did a lot of them in 2016 and 2017 when Trump first won the presidency and then became the presidency. Once we started seeing what they were doing and the enforcement and, to be honest, how they were violating people's rights. We don't do it as often, which is why we're going to talk about it in this show. How did Brian do what he did? How was he able to save those 2 immigrants from detention? Now, I don't know if they were detained on another occasion. We only know that in this situation, ICE did not have permission to detain them. They couldn't even confirm who they were. And Brian was absolutely right. He had no obligation to answer any questions. And he didn't. So, we have something very simple for you. It's called the red card. We introduced it around the time of the World Cup. The whole point is the red card is to say, "Hey, stop." So this card says, and I know you can't read it from where you are. It's too small. But it has your rights on the back of it. Yes, it also has the phone number to my office, but that's not the reason to have it. This is so that you don't have to remember all the rights that I'm talking to you about now. And we give it to you absolutely free. Now, these rights can help you whether you're a U.S. citizen or whether you're a lawful permanent resident, you're here with a visa, or you're here undocumented or illegally. The rights are the same. Super important. Have it with you. Now, listen, if you get pulled over and you get in trouble at 2 in the morning, I'm not answering the phone. But a live operator will. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, someone will take your call, get your information, and follow up. Super important. Now, what are those rights? Number one, you have the right to remain silent. What do I mean by that? Listen, officer comes to you, says license and registration, you provide it. If they ask you, hey, where were you coming from? You don't have to answer that. If they ask you, hey, you been smoking weed? Were you drinking? You don't need to answer that. If you say yes, you're going to get arrested. If you say no and you have a bag of marijuana on your lap, now you've just lied to the police and the evidence is right there. Don't make it easy for the officer. Look, a lot of them don't have more than a high school education. That's okay. A lot of my clients don't have more than high school education either. The point is, don't make their job any easier than you have to. When an officer pulls you over, they're observing and looking for evidence of a crime. If you volunteer the information, you make their job easy. They're going to serve and protect. So if you have an open container of alcohol, if you have marijuana on a dashboard, you're going to get arrested. You shouldn't have those things anyway, but you certainly shouldn't have it in the car. So, keep your mouth shut. Don't answer any questions that you don't need to. You can say, I'm sorry, I won't answer any questions without my attorney present. Know your rights, number 2. Always carry American identification. What do I mean by that? Driver's license. Resident identification card. I don't care. I don't care if it's expired. What I don't want you to do is take your passport with you. Unless you're here with a valid visa and that visa's not expired. I don't mean that you're here as a tourist, that you entered in 2015, that the visa says it's valid for 10 years, and now we're in 2019 and you think it's still valid. It's not. Because when you enter on a visa, Customs Border Agent gives you a certain period of time to stay here, 3 months, 90 days, 180 days, or something in between. Once you're past that, you're not here, you've overstayed your visa and you're now illegal. If ICE officer sees your passport and you're undocumented, and believe me, you know if you're undocumented. If the ICE officer sees your passport, they're going to see you're undocumented. They're not going to suspect anymore. You're going to get detained. If you don't give them the information, the officer isn't going to know, generally speaking. Hi, my name is Andrés Mejer. Okay, let me see. Well, let me show you my passport. My passport shows that I entered in 1981. I never left. I don't have a green card. I don't have a citizenship. I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to get detained. Now, if I didn't show them the passport, they might not have known. They can look for my information, but ICE by themselves will not have the right to arrest me if I exercise those rights. Now, that's why I say don't take your passport. Now, 2 years ago under Obama, I would not have told you that. I would have said take your passport, because if you don't have a criminal record, if you're not a danger to society, ICE would not have detained you and put you in removal proceedings. It's a new world. If they know you're here without permission, you're getting detained. 100% guaranteed. That's the world we live in now. So don't do it. Keep your passport at home. Take identification. I don't care if the license is from Maryland from 1995. It's expired. Okay, but at least it says who you are and your address and your information. It may have changed, but it's better than nothing. If you live in a city like Perth Amboy, or if you live in New York, for example, listen, there are cities that will give you identification. That is a valid government-issued form of identification. It's not a driver's license. It's just identification. 3, never take fake documents with you. Listen, when I was a kid, I had a fake license. A lot of people had a fake license. Why? because you wanted to show that you were older than you were to be able to get into a bar, because that's where the women were. That's the truth. But, the things we did as a kid, we can't do now as adults. Number one. Number two, it's a different world. If I'm undocumented, you know what? Forget undocumented. Let's say I'm a green card holder and I'm 19 years old. All right? I want to go out and have a good time. I get a driver's license that shows I'm 22. It's the summer. I'm going to go down to Asbury Park. I want to go to a bar. I want to pick up chicks. Police officer sees me, or the bouncer sees it, calls the police over who's around the corner. I get arrested. Now I'm charged with a crime. I could lose my green card. It's real. Don't take fake documents with you. Listen, Asbury Park Police, Long Branch, I got to tell you, they've seen so many Mexican driver's licenses already, Guatemala and Salvador. They know when they're real and they're fake. Don't do it. It's not going to help you. I had a client that had fake documents that were legitimate, meaning he went and he got a document with a different name in his own country. Those were validly issued documents, but it wasn't him. Gets pulled over by the police. Officer asks him, "Hey, is this really you?" He says, "No, it's not." Officer didn't know that. He was in jail for almost a year and a half before I was able to get him out. Don't do it. Don't volunteer information that can be used against you. Thank you for your kind words, Sal. I hope you're doing well. Never take false documents with you. It's not going to help you. In this world, in this climate, that's a fourth or a third degree offense. Providing false documentation, obstructing of justice, nothing good comes out of it. You could be detained for an exceptionally long time for what used to be nonsense. Number 4, don't lie to the police. It's not going to help you. You think that you're helping yourself. You're really not. For example, officer pulls me over. It's 2 a.m., Friday night. I'm leaving a bar. Officer saw me pull out a bar. Says, "Hey, you been drinking?" You say no. You have a bottle of alcohol in the car that's open. What about that bottle? "Oh, that was from before." "Oh, why is it still cold?" You're getting arrested. Or you say, "Hey, yeah, I only had 2 beers." The moment the officer hears, "I had alcohol," chances are you're getting arrested. You're better off just saying, because you have one of these cards, "I won't answer any questions without my attorney." Now, the officer may suspect, but suspicion is usually not enough alone. They need something else. In the DUI context, and why are we talking about DUI so much? Because it's almost summer. So this is when a lot of DUI arrests happen. Between November and December and entering the summer time. People go to bars. It's warm outside. People have a good time. You're going to be asked. If you lie about it and the officer believes otherwise, you're getting arrested. You're better off by saying, "I won't answer any questions without my attorney present." Number 5, fifth, know your rights. Super important. If the police are coming after you, they show up, don't run. It's not going to help you. Listen, you may be fast, but it's really hard to outrun that Motorola. Officer just says, "Hey, officer needs assistance, suspect on the run, going down, blah, blah, blah." And listen, you're going to have 2 or 3 cops chasing you, some in cars. Now, before they were just suspicious. Now, all of a sudden, you don't know what happened. They stop you. Now they say you're resisting arrest. You're aggravated assault on a police officer. All of a sudden, a simple situation becomes really complicated. And if you're an immigrant, even a lawful permanent resident, or a student on a valid student visa, or a college graduate, or even a college professor on an H-1B visa, now all of a sudden you're facing serious charges, 3rd degree, 2nd degree offenses. Guess what? You're going to be placed in removal proceedings, and the immigration judge is not going to give you bail. Criminal judge will. Maybe high, but the immigration judge will not. Will say, "You're a danger to society, sir, and until your criminal case is resolved, you're staying detained." Don't do it. It's not going to help you. It only makes your situation worse. Number 6, never fight with the police. Listen, some police are really present individuals. Others are pricks. It's a fact. People are people. And we all have bad days. And sometimes there are some police officers that abuse their power. They might push you. They might insult you. But listen, if you raise your hands and you fight back, now you have aggravated assault of a police officer. Obstruction of justice. They can hit you with 3 or 4 offenses. None of them were the reason they were pulling you over. None of them were why they were going to arrest you to begin with. And now you're being detained 2, 3, 4, 5 months. Yes, it hurts your pride. Yes, it's not right. They shouldn't treat you that way. Absolutely. But is it worth $20, $30, $40, $50,000? If the criminal court judge gives you a $100,000 bail, all right, maybe you can put down 10% to get out. That's $10,000. In immigration, there's no 10%. If you get a $10,000 bond, immigration they call it bond. In the criminal world they call it bail. So if an immigration judge gives you a $10,000 bond, you got to pay all $10,000. Certified check by a U.S. citizen. It's not a joke. You're better off not defending yourself in the moment. Look, you may have a good lawsuit afterwards for police brutality. You never know. I had a client. He was charged with a DUI. I don't know what happened. He was less than... The video is a little unclear. One thing is for sure, the police sergeant picked up my client, body slammed him on a table in front of other cops. Now, we pushed the issue. That sergeant was arrested. The sergeant was reprimanded. He lost his... He forced retirement. My client, DUI went away. Not guilty. Police brutality. On top of it, he got a U visa as a victim of a violent crime. So hey, it can happen. And look, in the moment, did he want to defend himself? Absolutely. But he was already arrested in front of 5 or 6 cops in handcuffs, and this officer lost control. It happens. Don't go with your first impulse. Don't defend yourself, because at the moment it might feel right. You might even win the fight. You're going to lose the war. So, number 8, if you're detained by the police or immigration, don't talk about your criminal background if you have any. Don't talk about your entries and exits into the U.S. Don't answer any questions without your attorney present. For all the reasons I just explained before, it is incredibly important. Number 9, know your rights. Number 9 thing you need to do. Listen, the moment you're out of detention, whether it's immigration or the police, write down notes as quickly as possible. What happened? What, where, when, how? Badge numbers if you know it. What towns? What would they say to you? What did they do? Listen, there's no time that you're going to remember better than right now. If you're on trial 6 months later or a year later, are you going to remember the details as freshly as it's in your mind the day of the event? Of course not. Write it down as soon as you can. So that's Know Your Rights. It's a seminar we've given many a times. We usually explain 5 environments and how to apply each of the 9 when you're walking down the street or you're pulled over by the police or ICE shows up at your house or your place of employment. We don't have time to go over all of those today, but we do have those videos. If you want to go back, you can go to our YouTube channel or you can go on Facebook, Andrés Mejer Law, and take a look at those Know Your Rights videos. Now, most of them are in Spanish because this is new. We only recently started doing the same segments in English and in Spanish. That's why it's important that I did this right now. Now, third part of this segment, 5 critical mistakes that can cause you being placed in removal detention if you're in the United States illegal. Here are the 5 critical things to avoid if you're in the U.S. illegal. Number 1, Rihanna's regrets. You have a little too much to drink. You go home, You start arguing with your spouse. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. You make too much noise. Kids are waking up, or for whatever reason, you're now arguing. Police gets called to the scene. Now you're getting arrested and being charged with domestic violence. And because now you're considered a criminal, ICE is going to try to deport you. Look, if you're afraid for your life, if your partner or whomever is threatening you and you're legitimately afraid, you call the police, of course. But if someone is angry for whatever reason and you're just arguing, not afraid of your life, just arguing, don't call the police. Do yourself a favor. Get out of the house. Go to your friends. Go to your brothers. Go to a hotel. Wherever. Just leave. Don't let it get to the point that someone's calling the police, because, look, the police are going to arrest somebody. What they don't want to happen is find out the next day someone died, and the police will call to the scene and they did nothing. So they're going to arrest somebody, because if they arrest somebody, they know they did something, and the person is not going to be able to go and hurt somebody else. They're covering their rear. You're better off just leaving. Don't let a bad situation become a worse situation. The police is not a means to resolve a dispute between spouses or friends or what have you. It's only if you're afraid for your life. Critical mistake number 2, the Mel Gibson mistake. You have something to drink, you think you're feeling fine, you get behind the wheel to drive home, officer pulls you over and charges you with driving under the influence. If you're convicted, yep, the government's going to try to deport you. You're better off taking an Uber, a Lyft, a taxi, or even walking. I don't care if it costs you $100 to get home. Believe me, $100 for a taxi is a whole lot cheaper than $5,000 to $7,000 to defend a DUI. And if you're undocumented, or if your legal status is at risk, forget $5,000 or $7,000. You're talking $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to defend both cases. $100 becomes nothing in comparison to that. Don't risk it. Get home, but don't drive. Be smart. Critical mistake number 3, the Justin Bieber syndrome. This is where you're driving without a license. Listen, I can't tell you how many hundreds, if not thousands at this point, of people I've defended for driving without a license. Nowadays, the police can pull your tags, look at your license plates, and they will see, is the car registered? Is the car insured? Is the owner of the vehicle have a valid license, or is his or her license suspended? Look, you may be fine. You may think everything's okay, but if you're borrowing someone else's car and they miss a payment, police now has reasonable suspicion to pull you over. Then they ask you for your information. You don't have a driver's license, you're being detained. If you have a suspended license, they could arrest you. Now, you can have a suspended license even though you've never had a license in the United States. That just means you pled guilty or were found guilty of a charge that resulted in a suspension and you never reinstated your license. How do you reinstate a license you didn't have? You pay a $100 fine at the Department of Motor Vehicles. That just means you now can apply for a license. If you don't have the 6 points, and if you're undocumented or illegal, obviously you're not going to have the 6 points. The point, long and story, is don't drive without a license, particularly if your license is suspended. Look, if you're convicted of a second license suspension, it's automatic jail time, 1 to 5 days. If you have a DUI and your license is suspended because of a DUI, if that happens twice, or if you have 2 DUIs and you're driving, that's automatically 6 months jail minimum. It's an indictable offense. It's a serious case. Don't drive. Look, we don't charge less than $900, $1,000, $750 for driving without a suspended license. It's a lot of money for something that shouldn't be a big deal. But in this climate, a conviction could result in jail time. Jail time means now you're facing immigration problem in addition to a traffic offense. There are no simple cases anymore. That's the world under Trump. Don't do it. Be safe. Don't drive. Critical mistake number 4 that I see immigrants make and results in detention. I call it 21 Savage stupidity. 21 Savage is a rapper out in Atlanta, born in England, came to the U.S. as a child. To be honest, by talking to him, you would know that he's undocumented or illegal. But he is. And he was supposed to appear in the Grammys, and he couldn't because he was detained by ICE. It cost him over $100,000 to get out of immigration detention. He only started filing for legal status after he was detained. That's the stupid part. He qualified for a U visa. He could have done it long before. He didn't. And it cost him a fortune to do it. And it's that much harder once you're in ICE custody. Don't wait. If you have a U.S. citizen spouse or parent or a green card holder, or you're a victim of violent crime, or you think you file for asylum, whatever the circumstances are, if you know you qualify for something, file today. Don't wait. Hire an immigration attorney. Give us a call. 888-888-0307. Or if we're too far for you, find someone else. But do not wait. Hire somebody. Figure out your options. If you qualify for something, get started right away. Even a family-based petition where one spouse is filing for another, it's a whole lot harder once you're detained. Because now, only the judge can decide whether to prove your case or not. Now it's a trial. What might have taken a year, now it takes 3 or 4 or 5 years. What might have been $5,000 or $7,000, now it's $15,000 to $30,000, depending on the circumstances. Do yourself a favor, contact an immigration attorney, and find out your options today. Don't wait. Critical mistake number 5, the George Clooney dilemma. Now, this situation is not as well known. If you have a U.S. citizen child, someone born in the United States with severe medical disability, you could be entitled to a green card. Why, you ask? Well, your child needs and will need a good doctor like George Clooney in ER. If you get deported, your child will likely go with you. And your child who's a U.S. citizen who gets those services now will lose those services, and because of that will suffer extreme and unusual hardship. Don't wait. Get started today. Become a lawful permanent resident. Thank you for listening to this segment. We covered 3 important issues. 1, know your rights, and how Brian was able to use his knowledge of know your rights to protect 2 immigrants who were in his car when ICE wanted to detain them. By knowing his rights, he was able to stop it. 2nd, what are those 9 rights, and how can you get a copy of this red card for free so you can have it with you always, so that, I had it backwards, so that you can know what your rights are. 3, what are the 5 critical mistakes that immigrants make that can lead in their detention? You have any questions, feel free to contact us on Facebook, Andrés Mejer Law, or on our web, andresmejerlaw.com, or call us directly in the office, 888-888-0307. Thank you for joining us on this English segment of Para Ser Legal. Until next week, Mondays at 9:30 in Spanish, 10 o'clock in English. Have a good week.